Welcome to another edition of Bigfoots Pad. And tonight's show, we are going to be talking about something very interesting. We're going to be talking about the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack.
Oh, yeah.
So this is something that's a little bit different. We're trying to go for a little bit more bizarre topic tonight. So we got David on the show, and we got Tim. Tim should be on here in a minute. And we got Nick, of course. So how you doing there, David?
I'm good. Got my computer working.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to try to get David on here more often as a panel member.
Yeah, definitely.
So, sorry, I'm looking at something. So a little bit of team news. Nick, you want to talk a little bit about what we've been up to today?
Well, today we finished up with our Nevada Sand Yeti documentary, which showed us going into the mountains out here outside of Las Vegas, where we caught some pretty interesting things, footprints, a bedding area, and perhaps even something trawling around in the woods on our infrared camera. It's really an exciting time because we've been trying to get this put together for the past couple of years, but we finally got together today with Tim, and we had a fun. Hopefully it's a badass documentary.
Yeah. I'll play the trailer real quick for everybody. I know a lot of people have seen this before, but let's play that for everybody real quick.
All right. No one has ever done this before. This is something that is a new frontier for paranormal teams on the West Coast and especially Nevada. We have been on the hunt for the legendary Sand Yeti, which has been known by many other names like the Yucca Man, the What Is It, Sasquatch, Skinwalkers. It has been called many, many things throughout history. We are on its tail, and we have found some stuff, and we cannot wait to bring it to you. Stay tuned.
All right. Let me see something real quick. Hey, David, are you seeing the video?
Yes.
That's weird. David said he's seeing it.
Yeah, my laptop's not picking it up.
All right, let me play. I'll just play it for the other 30 seconds, and I guess you're not just the only one not seeing it, I guess. Actually, Nick, hold on.
Something by people walking.
Something's walking down there.
Thing is walking on here. Look,
dude, come look at this, dude.
Something's walking across the screen. Look.
Oh, got no sound right now.
All right, so Nick's over here in person with me, so this will probably be easier. Just do it this way.
Yeah.
Let me turn off your audio on yours, Nick. Let's do this.
Yeah, just kick me out.
There we go. So that should be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nick's audio, it's weird. Like his that video didn't even show up on his computer for some
Yeah,
reason.
my computer's lagging really, really badly.
Yeah. So we have a couple of other things. Like we were saying, so we did edit that documentary today, so that's pretty much done. The next article, it says a strange piece of security footage from a home in California shows a pair of mysterious creatures scurrying through a backyard, and some have thought that these odd interlopers are gnomes. The very weird scene was reportedly captured last week on a home of Debbie Bernard in the community of Bondale Ranchos. In the admittedly difficult to discern video, the two seemingly bipedal creatures run past a patio set in view of a security camera before disappearing into the darkness. So this is kind of weird here. Let me pull this up.
Video of gnomes. Okay.
Video's not available anymore.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I guess we won't watch it then. The video's unavailable. Oh, there it goes. All right, let me play this video. Share my screen here. Here we go. I guess we're looking at this.
Yeah, you see the two little black creatures running by. That's weird.
What do you think of that, David? Bizarre, weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You think it's Photoshop, Nick?
No.
You don't think it's Photoshop? What do you think that is? Could be anything.
Could be a cat. It could be, a skunk or another small animal running by going to pick through the garbage.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave? You think that's anything, or you think it's nonsense?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Let's see. Here's Tim. Let me see if he's on there. So, all right, Tim. Yeah, Nick's laptop was being all crappy, so we ended up having to share a laptop.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I had to eat dinner first.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just sharing a couple videos before we
Hey,
get
David,
started.
how's it going?
Good.
But here's our last video we're going to share before we get started with tonight's topic. This one is a Bigfoot video. It was posted to Coast AM. It's supposed to be a drone footage of a Bigfoot.
Oh, I seen this.
Off onto the left.
Yeah,
What?
see that.
What the
It's
world?
definitely Interesting.
What is that?
What do you think of that?
Incredible. What?
What's weird to me is the guy doesn't try to follow it all that much with the drone.
Yeah, if I had been doing the drone piloting, I would have tried.
No way. You serious?
Or is that the same footage, or is that different though? I can't
That's a
tell.
different angle.
Oh, so I guess he did follow
What
it. Though.
is that?
You think that's CGI at all? You think that's a real person, whether it's a costume or not?
Well, it's hard to tell from the angle, but I seen this a couple days ago. People are thinking it's real. They were saying online.
Mm.
It's a long video. He filmed it for quite a while, whatever.
Well,
Yeah, you got some good shots of it for sure.
I wonder what the backstory is. Like, what was he doing out there?
Yeah, good question.
I don't know. So apparently that somebody caught what they think is a Bigfoot on that video.
Mm.
What's your opinion on that, Nick? You think that's something real, or
I mean, in this era of streamers and people just making videos for attention, I do believe you need to have some healthy skepticism. It's really hard to tell if that's genuine footage of a Sasquatch or did some guys go out in the middle of the woods with an ape costume and then follow this person around.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell from that angle. I mean, it's definitely an interesting piece of footage.
you think it's real, Tim or David? What do you think before we get headed on to today's topic?
Not just the movement. It looked too too weird to me. The way it just moves, like
Yeah.
to me, it's not like real animal type of movement.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Yeah, and I was trying to look at the footprints to see if it left any footprints and stuff, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I know people were saying online they think it to be real, but like Nick said, with some healthy criticism,
Yeah.
skepticism too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking. I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of tossing around different ideas what we could do for our news stories. I'm thinking maybe sometimes we could kind of like analyze a video, or maybe sometimes we could share some kind of short information on like an encounter of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
I know next week we're going to be talking about the Arizona Bigfoot. We're going to try to get David back on, and Floyd Wills from last week said he wants to join us as a panel member.
Yeah, it'd be cool with that. He was really cool.
So we're going to try to get Floyd back on here with David next week.
David
was doing a little bit of research on today's topic, and he was saying it sounded bizarre.
Yeah, it's very strange.
So we're going to get started with today's topic. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the legend of Spring-Heel Jack. Spring-Heel Jack is a very interesting story, like I was saying. It's an entity from English folklore of the Victorian era. Looks like I'm going to be doing a lot of reading today. Spring-Heel Jack, here's a quick description. I wrote this down because I figured there's no way I'm going to remember all these sightings. Spring-Heel Jack was described by people who claim to have seen him as having a terrifying or frightful appearance and diabolical psychogamy, clawed hands, and eyes that resembled balls of fire. One report claimed that beneath the black coat, he wore a helmet and a tight-fitting white garment like an oilskin. Many stories also report a devil-like appearance. Others said that he was tall and thin with the appearance of a gentleman. Several reports mentioned that he could breathe out blue and white flames, and he wore sharp metallic claws at his fingertips. At least two people claim that he was able to speak comprehensible English. Jack was mainly attacking women in the encounters that were reported, and the figure or monster would ring a doorbell, and when someone would answer, it would ravage their clothes with his claws. Other sightings have him simply ambushing people who were out walking. So, before we get started, what do you guys think about all this?
Well, it's a topic we've discussed in the past many times on our old radio show. It's very fascinating, and it makes you think whether it's like an actual human or if it's like something paranormal.
Definitely a Bigfoots Pad classic topic that we used to
Definitely
on once per year. So I actually specifically requested that we do this, and it's a very interesting, odd topic. However, it's also very fun to take a deep dive into and explore the different possibilities. I'm not sure if it's a supernatural phenomena or a peeping Tom that was just messing with people. It's just quite an interesting thing.
David, I know this is like your first dive into this. You ever heard of this before?
I've never heard of it until you mentioned it, and yeah, that's what I would want to know. Like, if was it a person or was it like some type of entity?
Oh, we're gonna get into that for sure. So, continuing on, we're gonna get into a few of these reports here. The first alleged encounter of Spring-Heel Jack was made in London in 1837, and the last report actually came in about 1904. According to later accounts, in October 1837, a girl named Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill, where she was working as a servant after visiting her parents in Battersea. On her way home, a strange figure leapt from a dark alley after immobilizing her with a tight grip on her arms, or a tight grip of his arms. He began to kiss her face and ripped her clothes off and was touching her flesh with his claws, which were, according to the victim, cold and clammy like those of a corpse. In a panic, the girl screamed, making the attacker quickly run from the area. The commotion brought several residents who immediately launched a search for the aggressor, but nobody was ever found. The next day, the leaping character was said to have chosen a very different victim near the Stevens home. We'll get into that in just a second. So basically, it sounds like this guy was some kind of a attacker trying to
Rape somebody.
rape some lady. Is what it sounded like.
Now, an interesting side note here is, we're talking the mid to late 19th century England, coincides with the times of Jack the Ripper. I'm wondering, now this occurred before Jack the Ripper, starting in the early 1840s, late 1830s, but we're talking about a bleak time in the history of Great Britain where there were a lot of predators on the loose, especially in the lower income areas.
Definitely.
Perhaps Spring Heel Jack was just one of those predators. Again, I don't know. I'm not making a judgment, but
I wonder what he would have done if she didn't scream. Would he have killed her?
perhaps, yeah.
And what kind of crazy villain has claw hands like Freddy Krueger? That reminds you of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Trying to rip people's clothes off.
No, so I don't know. Do you know of any devices, Nick, where they had claw hands back in the?
I mean, it's totally a possibility. I mean, theatrical claws.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was something like a woman's, ladies' self-defense glove. This is what I was looking for. Let me share my screen real quick. This is something I was like, was it something along these lines? Like, check this out. It said this was a 1850s ladies' defense glove that had claws on the hand. You could see.
Oh, I didn't
That's
know.
interesting.
I did not know these things existed. Yeah,
Yeah, neither. Huh?
they did have
So the device existed, I
gloves
guess.
on them with.
That's what it looks like.
So a perpetrator could have gotten a pair of these gloves and used them as part of his costume / performance.
But there is something weird about Spring Heel Jack that we're going to get into right now that makes it sound like it might not be a person. The next day after the first encounter I just mentioned, the leaping character is said to have chosen a very different victim near Mary Stevens' home. This time, he jumped in the way of a passing carriage, causing the coachman to lose control, crash, and severely injure himself. Several witnesses claim that he escaped by jumping over a 9-foot-tall wall while cackling a high-pitched, ringing laughter. Gradually, the news of the strange character spread, and soon the press and public gave him the name Spring Heel Jack. So, kind of sounds like an asshole. Jumps in front of a carriage, makes him crash, then he just laughs and jumps away.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, there's definitely a superhuman character, Spring Heel Jack, where he's able to bound over a 9-foot wall.
Yeah.
Again, is that a factual eyewitness report or this stretching of the truth, almost folklorish?
Yeah. What do you think, David? Like, what would they do? Like, how would they do that back then? What they have, like springs in his shoes or something? How do you do that?
No, I think, for someone to be able to do that, what we consider like a big jump, now it's like back then, if they jumped real far, it would have been like, wow,
Yeah.
Exactly.
athletic, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. I mean, someone.
If you look at it, we should look up Michael Jordan could jump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you took Michael Jordan or LeBron James and put them back then into England jumping over walls, it would have caused quite a stir.
Yeah.
My thing, though, is like, could there be like some kind of an inventor or something that made some kind of device that could make him leap up? Or maybe there was some kind of wires or ropes or something. But wouldn't there have to be some kind of accomplice to do that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And like, what was the purpose of jumping in front of the carriage is my question. Like, what, you just want to hurt someone?
I'm reading right now, it says LeBron James can only jump 44 inches.
That's what, 12, 24, 36. It's about 4 feet.
Yeah.
We're going to film a video of Nick trying to jump over a 9-foot wall.
That will be an epic failure that'll make
Or
anything.
rooftop to rooftop.
Rooftop to rooftop without touching the sides.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So continuing on, the two most popular sightings come from a lady by the last name of Scales and someone named Alsop. So Perhaps the best known of the alleged incidents involving Spring Heel Jack were the attacks of 2 teenage girls, Lady Scales and Jane Alsop. The Alsop report was widely covered in the newspapers, including The Times. While fewer reports appeared in relation to the attack of the Scales, the press coverage of these 2 attacks helped raise the profile of the Spring Heel Jack. First, I'm going to talk about the Alsop case. And like I said, there's a lot of reading involved in this. Jane Alsop reported that on the night of February 19th, 1838, she answered the door of her father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer. He told her to bring a light, claiming that we've caught Spring Heel Jack in the lane. So she brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment she handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and presented the most hideous and frightful appearance, she says. He started vomiting blue and white flames from his mouth, and his eyes resembled red balls of fire. Miss Alsop reported that he wore a large helmet and that his clothing, which appeared to be very tight-fitting, resembled white oilskin. Without saying a word, he caught hold of her and began tearing her gown with his claws, like the last lady, which she so certain were of some kind of metallic substance. She screamed for help and managed to get away from him and ran towards the house. He caught her on the steps and tore her neck and arms with his claws. She was rescued by one of her sisters after the assailant ran away. So, God, where do you even start talking about this? I mean,
Yeah.
Sounds like either a rapist or a succubus.
well, think about it, though. He went after a young teenage girl. It wasn't an old lady. So went after a young girl, tearing out her clothes again, tried to lure her away from her house. It almost sounds like some kind of like a criminal pervert type.
Yeah.
David just shakes his head.
He's like, yeah.
That's all you can do.
Yep.
But this time, though, they said, what was up with the puking or vomiting the white and blue flames? What do you guys think of that? Before I say my opinion, what do you have to say about that?
That's what I was wondering. If maybe it's like ectoplasm or something. If
So you
it's on
think
the paranormal scale.
So you think it might be a ghost?
Maybe, or a demon.
I mean,
On the
yeah, definitely.
paranormal scale, like most creatures don't like fire too because they get burned, like
Mm-hmm.
David's gonna demonstrate a puke yellow or white and blue flames.
after some tequila.
We're by the way, I forgot to mention this. We're probably gonna start heading out again doing ghost hunts. I should have mentioned this earlier. We're gonna start doing ghost hunts again. We're gonna try to start bringing David along with us. What we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We have something scheduled for Overton for September. I don't know. We don't know who's going or who's not going for that one yet. But that could be the first one we're doing. We'll talk to David about that privately at another time. But Nick, you want to describe that real quick while we're on the topic? I know it's kind of unrelated to Spring Heel Jack, but can you talk a little bit about our trip coming up?
Well, we've rented out in this old gymnasium that was built in the 30s in a small town called Overton, which is about an hour outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. It's a historical landmark that was in use back in the 30s, and it also is still in use today. People can reserve it for different functions like birthday parties, weddings, quinceaneras, whatever. And we're going to go there for one night. And as far as I know, we're the first paranormal team to do anything relating to a ghost hunt at this location.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I've noticed,
Sounds good.
prior ghost hunts is locations that have not really been tapped for paranormal activity tend to have the greatest spiritual activity.
They had to even let us in there.
I've been asking for like 5 years to get in there. I'm surprised someone finally even gave us the opportunity. But yeah, you're not just renting the gym though. There's all these offices in like an attic area and like a basement. So I guess there's more to it than just like a random gymnasium where you play basketball.
Talk about the history, what it used to be.
Yeah, as far as I know, it was used by the school out there for a long time. It was used as a community center. I believe I was told by one of the locals it was used as a hospital at some point, which gives me hope that we're going to find something. Like I said, we're going to try to get David to go with us, which would be interesting. before we get ahead of ourselves, we are planning a trip for a part 2 to our Bigfoot documentary that we're releasing in 2 months.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to bring David on that one because we want to get a fresh eyes on the location and see what he thinks.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, so we got some cool stuff there. So we're kind of going to be kind of busy. We try to stay busy in the winter time more than any other time of the year because I don't know why that's just when we're busy.
Well,
because we're fat and
yeah, we're fat and out of shape. We can't be running
and it's
around.
cool then.
Being in the desert, it gets hot, so it's better to do things around.
Yeah, and then we're planning a couple of Bigfoot trips. I know we do want to do something in Northern California to celebrate. This is actually our 20th year of being around for BFP.
Mhm.
So David gets to come along with us right when the good stuff's going on.
Good.
So we're going to get back onto Spring-Heeled Jack before we get too sidetracked. We're going to talk about the Scales case. Nick, you want to read we'll have, like I said, there's a lot of reading involved. We'll have Nick read the first part of about this.
On the 28th of February, 1838, 9 days after the attack on Miss Alsop, 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were returning home after visiting their brother, a butcher who lived in a respectable part of Limehouse. Miss Scales stated in her deposition to the police that as she and her sister were passing along Green Dragon Valley, they observed a person standing in angle of the passage. She was walking in front of her sister at the time, and just as she came up to the person who was wearing a large cloak, he spurted quantity of blue flame in her face, which deprived her of her sight and so alarmed her, and that she instantly dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits, which continued for several hours.
So before we go on to the second half of this, so Spring-Heeled Jack spit something. She says it was the blue flame they were talking about. Was it really a flame, or was this some kind of a chemical almost? Because since she started having seizures, I was like, so was this some kind of like a poison of some kind, or what do you think, Tim?
It's very possible. You never know. In Victorian England, there's a lot of new stuff coming out. There's a lot of, I don't know, probably criminals, rapists. There's a lot of folklore. So it's hard to say.
I think it almost sounds like some kind of like a potion or like a concoction they made. Is it really a flame? Or even if it was a flame, why would you blow it in her face unless you're trying to make her run away or fall to the ground like so you could rape her?
Yeah, and if it's on the paranormal scale, it's hard to say what it is.
Now, I know of two possible suspects for the chemicals that may have been used. The first that comes to mind is chloroform, which, anybody gets next to it, they knock out. And I think I've read reports of chloroform causing seizures. And then the second chemical, I believe it could have been, is maybe this kind of dust. I've had conversations with Hispanic Latino witches, the brujas, and they told me about a dust.
David's laughing.
A dust. Yeah, I know. At my job, I was able to actually talk to a girl that owns a store here in Las Vegas, and she gave me some good information. And she said there's like some kind of dust they like blow in your face, and it can like knock you over. So I don't know what kind of chemical that might be. However, Spring-Heeled Jack, they have used that same chemical.
Well, I gotta put David on the spot. David, you grew up in Mexico off and on, and part here, and you go to Mexico all the time. Do you know anything about that? Like Nick's talking about, like witches in Mexico that do stuff like that, or?
Oh yeah.
I don't really know what he's talking about, but I was like, you know what he's referring to?
Chemicals like that, yes. They make you hallucinate. They make you lose consciousness. So many different types,
Yeah.
So definitely. Not only that,
same
like
concept, but in
witchcraft
England.
and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
We have, hey, John and Tammy are watching. Hey, thanks for tuning in.
Hello, guys.
Let's see. We'll have Nick read the second part of this story, and then we will talk about that a little bit.
All right. Her brother added that on the evening in question, he had heard the loud screams of one of his sisters moments after they had left his house, and on running up Green Dragon Alley, he found his sister Lucy on the ground in a fit. With her sister attempting to hold and support her, she was taken home, and he then learned from his other sister what had happened. She described Lucy's assailant as being of a tall, thin, and gentlemanly appearance, covered in a large cloak and carrying a small lamp or bullseye lantern, similar to those used by the police. The individual did not speak, nor did he try to lay hands on them, but instead walked quickly away. Every effort was made by the police to discover the author of these and similar outrages, and several persons were questioned.
So it's almost, to me, sounds like he's wearing a cloak because he wants to hide his identity, not necessarily because it's helping him jump or run quickly. I guess he could be wearing it. So when they say he was wearing like an oilskin outfit, what would be the point of that? So he could quickly run away, or if he is jumping around like they're saying he is? Because by this point, Spring Heel Jack has only left in the second sighting of him ever at this point. So at this point, it sounds like a creep that's preying on women and spitting chemicals in their face or whatever. So continuing on, in 1843, however, a wave of sightings swept the country again. A report from Northamptonshire described him as the very image of the devil himself, with horns and eyes of flame. East Anglia reports of attacks on drivers of mail coaches became common. So they're saying that this guy is creepy looking, or he looks almost paranormal, or do you think could be a guy wearing a mask maybe? Or like David said back then, because some of the stuff we would take for granted nowadays, they might not have taken for granted.
One thing, a quick thought that's popped into my head would be an interesting thing to look at. To see if there were any circuses in England where these sightings had occurred, because this guy sounds like a master trapeze artist or performer with the costumes and his agility and various other parts of the description. Sound like someone who would perform in Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, exactly. A trapeze rapist, evidently.
It's a trapeze rapist. I hate to laugh, but
I don't know. I never thought I'd hear those two words together.
A trapeze rapist.
Not like that.
Well, they said that too, that Spring Heel Jack was commonly holding up like coaches. They said specifically mail coaches, like delivering mail. And I'm like, so maybe he was wanting to steal packages, or maybe he did steal packages.
Yeah.
Possible.
To me, it sounds almost like Nick and Tim were saying, some kind of theatrical thief of some kind. Or let's take a step back. What are the possibilities that it's not like a regular person? It could be something paranormal, Nick. What could it be? A ghost, or some kind of maybe something that was summoned, or
it could have been something that was summoned. It could be a succubus. I'm trying to think of different paranormal entities that match the description of Spring Heel Jack. However, I can't think of any right off the top of my head now. So it sounds like some sort of perhaps trickster spirit. Many cultures have stories about trickster spirits. One of the most famous ones being Loki in Norse mythology, where he would play tricks and pranks on people. And that just comes to mind, some sort of a trickster spirit, or some kind of a jester, I guess. And that goes back
exactly
to theatrical circus-like performance that Spring Heel Jack would put on.
I'm changing my name on here real quick. Jeremy and Nick. There we go. That was bothering me.
No.
There we go. Yeah, so what do you call it? Whatever the case, the guy's a creep, whoever it is.
Yeah.
So I'll get into some of the later reports. So beginning in the 1870s, Spring Heel Jack was reported again in several places distant from one another. The first one I have says in 1872, the News of the World reported that Peckham was in a state of commotion owing to what is known as the Peckham Ghost, and a mysterious figure quite alarming in appearance. The editorial pointed out that it was none other than Spring Heel Jack who terrified a past generation. So this is 40 years later that Spring Heel Jack is still in the news. If this really was one guy, though, would you really? You couldn't be 70 years old doing this.
No.
It would have to be what? I hate to compare it to this, but it would be like the Saw movies where the guy's like has other people doing his bidding, like later on.
It could be that scenario.
Or copycats.
Yeah, copycat. You took the words right out of my mouth. Someone could have read about Spring Heel Jack much earlier and then decided, hey, I'm going to come out to my town and start doing somersaults and ripping girls' dresses off. It's just quite a wild story that's really interesting.
It's pretty nuts.
Hey, I hate to say this. I keep thinking I say her name. It's Vader, isn't it? Hey, am I getting that right? It's Vader, right? Is it Viator or Vader? But yeah, thanks for joining the show again. I appreciate you showing up. She was wondering, do you think it's a copycat of some kind? Like maybe it's like I was saying, like another generation, someone that knows the original guy, if it was a guy. They were saying that these reports went all the way from southern England all the way up into Scotland and parts of Ireland, though.
Right, 1850s it started being seen elsewhere, and I read in the 1860s their military actually Vatir.
There we go. Vatir, okay.
But I read in the 1860s their military actually set traps for Spring Heel Jack too.
Oh, I did see that. We're gonna get into that in just a moment.
Oh, okay.
So my thing though is, say Spring Heel Jack really is one guy doing something in London. Could that guy have traveled up to like Edinburgh or something and done stuff up there too? Or like, how would you, even if it was somebody different, how would they have get the costume down and the oil skin and all that kind of stuff?
I mean,
good question. And again, this is only if we're looking at the human theory behind it.
Yeah. The fact that these sightings are spread out by both distance and time definitely puts a hole in that this was an example of a creeper, of just a predatory man that is definitely not destroyed. That argument's not destroyed by the sightings being separated by time and geography, but it definitely brings to mind and questions whether this is some kind of a demonic or interdimensional being.
But something I was also going to bring up, if this was a person and they're all trying to kind of be creepy and almost rape these women, what do you be like, hey, David, hey, Tim, hey, let's go travel around the country. Let's all go put on claws and go rape some women. You guys want to go do it? Like, how do you, how does it make sense?
No.
All right, hey, guys, learn how to breathe some white flames. Let's scare people and jump over 9-foot tall walls for fun.
No, it's a very interesting topic, though.
So, in the Illustrated Police News, in April and May of 1873, it's reported that there were numerous sightings of Sheffield of the Park Ghost, which locals also came to identify as Spring Heel Jack. So are we actually seeing Spring Heel Jack in all these places, or is it just that everything that's a mysterious encounter or a creep is being referred to as Spring Heel Jack?
Well, right now I'm just looking up trickster spirits in English/Irish Celtic folklore. But that if the entity of Spring Heel Jack is going to be supernatural, I definitely think that it's some sort of maybe a poltergeist where it just kind of messes with people to get its jollies off.
Or succubus or incubus.
It might not have harmful intent, but it definitely fuels its existence on just, making people afraid.
Let's do this real quick. Let me share my screen, because while we're on the topic of this, let me share some pictures of what people claim Spring Heel Jack actually looked like in the Victorian times. So let's see. I don't know if you
and he's actually known as Spring Heel Jack the Demon too. So
yeah, the Demon of London or the Terrorizer of London. So I guess I don't know where the wings came from, but I guess this is from an actual, like a newspaper. If you look at this, some of these, let me just go to the old ones. This is
from the
it's on our thumbnail. This is what they claim he looked like when he jumped over that fence I was talking about. I don't know if I'd rather.
Very gentlemanly.
I like that one. But no, like, let me go back up real quick. That would scare the crap out of you if you see that.
I mean, that looks like.
What were you saying, Nick?
Oh, I was just saying that one that you just had on with the guy going like this looked like a very flamboyant performer, like something Elton John might do. Or something.
Liberace.
Liberace, yeah.
But so you got an idea of what Spring Heel Jack was supposed to look like. Since Nick is here in person, like I said, I'm gonna have Nick read some of these sightings. Like I said, it's a lot of reading, so I'll have Nick read the next one. This kind of goes along with what Tim was talking about.
In August 1877, one of the most notable reports about Spring Heel Jack came from a group of soldiers in Aldershot garrison. The story went as follows. A sentry on duty at the North Camp peered into the darkness, his attention attracted by a peculiar figure advancing towards him. The soldier issued a challenge, which went unheeded, and the figure came up beside him and delivered several slaps to his face. A guard shot at him with no visible effect. Some sources claim that the soldier may have fired blanks at him, others that he missed or fired warning shots. The strange figure then disappeared into the surrounding darkness with astonishing bounds.
So continuing on, do you want to stop there and talk about it? You want to read the second part and then
do your impression first, Nick.
So yeah, you're a guard. You're basically like a night watchman, and then a guy comes up and he's got like a cape.
Batir says it's Batman.
It's Batman. He's like, and he just fires some shots at him, and it doesn't seem to have any effect. It would be a rattling experience. I mean, it's like I said, this story is so strange but interesting at the same time.
The fact he like gentleman slapped him too was like of the time too.
Yeah. But here's my thing though. So this guy's wearing clothes like a gentleman with an oilskin cap with claws, jumping and slapping.
Yeah.
You would have to ask to be getting killed doing that crap. So anyways, there's a part 2 to it. Nick's going to read part 2, and then there's even more to talk about.
Lord Ernest Hamilton's 1922 memoir, 40 Years On, mentions the Aldershot appearances of Spring Heel Jack. However, he apparently erroneously says that they occurred in the winter of 1879 after his regiment, the 60th Rifles, had moved to Aldershot, and that similar appearances had occurred when the regiment was barracked at Colchester in the winter of 1878. He adds that the panic became so great at Aldershot that sentries were issued ammunition and were ordered to shoot the night terror on sight, following which the appearances ceased. Hamilton thought that the appearances were actually pranks carried out by one of his fellow officers, Lieutenant Alfrey. However, there's no record of Alfrey ever being court-martialed for the offense.
So what do you think of that, Tim? I know you were talking, you said that was something interesting. The Aldershot, where he ran the guard, and then they said that they shot him and nothing happened. So I wonder what that's all about. Maybe it was a ghost, or
maybe, like you said, maybe there was like since they call him a demon, maybe he's possibly a demon, maybe, or a poltergeist, like Nick said. It is fascinating, though.
Well, they were saying that it scared him so bad, or that freaked him out to where they started giving all the sentries weapons and guns and ammo to go shoot at him if he came back.
Exactly. So they took it serious.
Apparently, Spring Heel Jack learned his damn lesson. He didn't come back and do it again from the sounds of it. Right?
What kind of weapons did they have?
Muskets, like single-shot muskets, probably.
Yeah, black powder rifles and pistols. So now if they, taking that into consideration, they have black powder rifles and pistols. Mm-hmm. Those weapons were very inaccurate. The musket balls didn't hit, your intended targets very often. So that's why it would line a bunch of people up with these black powder rifles. They just would shoot and hope to hit their target.
So you think they might have missed when
They
were
may have
shooting?
missed them completely.
Huh?
That's definitely a possibility, given the fact these black powder rifles and pistols were not accurate.
So here's the thing. I was talking to this will be a funny one for Tim and David. So it just really was like a group of guys that were pulling pranks on someone. Can you imagine if I pulled the prank and they shot at me and missed? I'd be like, okay, I think David's getting the next one. I'm not. The next one's your turn. Not my turn. I'll do my turn later on. David, you wrote something in the chat. Was that a joke or are you being serious? I can't tell.
No, I was being serious.
Oh yeah. I never heard about that. You could tell it to us.
No, that one of the girls that got attacked saw like an insignia or a neck piece wearing a W.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Very interesting.
So what do you think that could mean? Do you think he's dumb enough to wear his initials on his neck or something? Or I guess you don't know. It forensics weren't really what they are nowadays.
And it could have been, like I said, just part of the costume. But, if I lean more towards a human origin for Spring Heel Jack, and I think that he was a circus performer or some kind of theatrical person. So having something like that on their costume wouldn't be weird. What the W means, I don't know, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
know
never
what it means.
yeah, I haven't. No.
You
The
know what
neck-
it means, Nick.
Wiener Schnitzel. He's rapping Wiener Schnitzel.
So the next one I'm going to talk. It takes place in a place called Lincolnshire. In the autumn of 1877, Spring Heel Jack was reportedly seen in Newport Arch in Lincolnshire. That's kind of hard to say. Lincolnshire. He was wearing a sheepskin. An angry mob supposedly chased him and cornered him. Just as an Aldershot, residents fired at him to no effect. As usual, he was said to have made use of his leaping abilities to lose the crowd and disappearing once again. Some townspeople reported him as laughing as he ran away, leaping over fences and small buildings. So now, according, I guess, Spring Heel Jack can now leap over whole entire buildings, which is kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
You think
Getting better with age.
You think that they're just exaggerating, maybe, or?
Yeah, I definitely think, as we've seen throughout human history, stories, folk stories, and myths and legends do have a grounding in truth. However, that truth then is elongated, it's stretched to become, fantastical.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of something, like they say there was like a real John Henry or a Johnny Appleseed, or there was a real Paul Bunyan.
Yeah.
Like Paul Bunyan was based off of a real logger in the 19th century. However, he didn't have a big blue ox and he wasn't 20 feet tall. He was a big, strong guy that probably could chop down a lot of trees and work hard, but he wasn't 20 feet tall and didn't have a big blue ox named Babe.
That's what I'm wondering too. But here's the thing. So they said he uses leap. This is what, the second time we've heard of his leaping abilities. So that means that this would have been what, the 40, 50 years later that they had that mechanism to jump like that.
Right. And you got to think if he's at least like in his teens or 20s at the first attack.
Can you imagine someone like in their 70s jumping around like that?
No.
So,
They're going to feel it when they come back down from that jump.
we'll have Nick read the next one.
Right. By the end of the 19th century, the reported sightings of Spring Heel Jack were moving towards the northwest of England. Around 1888 in Everton, North Liverpool, he allegedly appeared on the rooftop of St. Francis Xavier's Church in Salisbury Street.
So now he's on top of a church. This is what, this is 50 years after the first sighting. You want to read about the last sighting real quick, Nick?
Spring Heel Jack was last seen in 1904 at Everton in Liverpool.
Same town as the last one, right?
Yeah, bounding up and down the streets, leaping from cobbles to rooftops and back.
Wow. That's, what's that, like 80 years since the first,
Yeah,
or
like
70 years since the
So Spring Heel Jack went from being a rapist to just jumping around doing aerial stunts, I guess. So
He could have gotten paid for that.
So my thing though was like, say your dad was Spring Heel Jack. Imagine he's like, hey Nick, you need to carry on my legacy. Here's some claw hands and here's some spring legs. Go scare some people. Like, how's that work?
I don't know.
Well, he got nicer in age.
Well, yeah, at least he's not being such an a-hole in the new ones. He's just jumping around.
Jumping
There
around.
you go. Yeah.
But 1904, you figure that's still, I mean, that's still like over 100 years ago. But
Yeah.
in the sense of like modern technologies and things, that's really not too long ago. For him to be showing himself and acting like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess nowadays the Spring Heel Jack legend is carried on because now Tim and David are going to have to start jumping around from rooftop. No. So anyways, here's a couple of interesting talking points. After these incidents, Spring Heel Jack became one of the most popular characters of the period. His alleged exploits were reported in the newspapers and became the subject of several penny dreadfuls and plays performed in the cheap theaters that abounded at the time. The devil was even renamed Spring Heel Jack in some Punch and Judy shows, as recounted by Henry Matthew in the London Labour and London Poor.
Wow.
He says,
So he's becoming part of their folklore
yeah.
and their culture.
And it says the police did not dismiss the stories, and even the Duke of Wellington, although aged about 70 years old at the time, he went out armed on horseback to hunt and kill Spring Heel Jack.
Wow, didn't know that.
He must have been pissed. Think about that. How mad. 70 years old to go round up.
That's pretty cool, though.
And reports have led to the theory that the mysterious monster might have been a group of well-to-do men dressing up and scaring people as part of a bet. Others reported that the figure is wearing red shoes or some kind of armor. And next thing I was going to say to you guys is, what do you think of that? Can you really jump around like that wearing a body armor? Or would the armor hinder his jumps and things? Or maybe he's wearing the armor because he learned his lesson and got shot the last time he did that? Or actually, he would have gotten shot, 50 years ago almost at this point?
Yeah.
And the reports are moving northwest, they were saying, which means maybe the copycat lived up that way, I'm guessing.
Very possible.
There could be copycats, a plural. Maybe, some performers saw the stunts that the original Spring Heel Jack was doing, and they decided to copy his routine minus the pervy creepiness. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why we see a shift in the behavior of Spring Heel Jack.
Very true. And David said and David did say he saw the W, so maybe it leans towards that theory of the well-to-do gentleman.
Yeah.
That's true. My thing too, I was like, so if Spring Heel Jack is actually more than one person, so what? Like, someone dies and then you just decide to be like Spring Heel Jack, or like, wonder how you determine who's going to be the next Spring Heel Jack.
It just would have to be somebody with extraordinary acrobatic and performance abilities.
I have a couple of notable talking points here. The first one I wrote is that Spring Heel Jack is capable of speaking English, but they said his voice is high-pitched and it has a ringing laugh that he released after scaring his victims and running away. I don't know. I don't really hear a whole lot about him talking besides the original reports where he told that woman to come outside or whatever the case was. Since he does speak English, that means it would have to be some kind of very intelligent spirit of some kind, or it would have to be just a regular person, right?
You would think, yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this. How did he jump so high and have great speed? So Nick was saying you have to be someone familiar with acrobatics. Since he's reported as being tall and pale, could he possibly be a ghost? We kind of talked about this a little bit. Because I know we had, what the hell's her name? Lisa Morton was on the show. She talked about the spook shows, and she talked about the acrobatics and things some of them would do. And this really was roughly during that time frame, the late 1800s and early 1900s. What do you think of that, Tim?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't. I was posting on Twitter. What was that?
Well, we were talking about Spring Heel Jack doing all these tricks and spooky things. This was during the time that Linda Morton, when she was on her show, said that they had all the spook shows going on and they were doing
Right.
acrobatics and things like that.
Yeah, maybe it was someone was a part of one of those.
She was telling us that one of the performers, remember, he supposedly acted like he levitated out of a second-story window, and she was talking about people that were making giant armoires and things lift up and travel across the room.
Yeah.
So I guess it wasn't technically impossible,
Yeah.
but this guy would have to literally have this shit planned out like beforehand. And I don't know how you would plan some of this ahead of time.
But it was plausible though.
It was possible because they did have those traveling spook shows.
Yeah.
Very true.
So some people said Spring Heel Jack was dressing in furs to appear like a bear. The most famous case is when he growled at a gardener, climbed the garden wall, and chased the gardener on all fours until he decided to leave. That just sounds like a lunatic to me. That doesn't even sound like Spring Heel Jack.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, and another thing I was thinking too, and even like besides the like not counting the paranormal, like there's just people that have extraordinary talents and stuff nowadays. Who's to say back then someone couldn't pull off something like this with just some weird skills? Yeah.
Yeah, I like I said, I lean more towards that he was a performer of some sort, and however, I believe in ghosts. I've documented ghosts for years. I've seen ghosts. So could have Spring Heel Jack been a spirit? Yeah, like I said, I lean into the trickster spirit theory. If Spring Heel Jack is going to be a ghost, some kind of a trickster poltergeist that thrives off of causing chaos and anarchy.
You want to
Right.
do the next couple talking points, Nick?
Yeah, sure. So the more Spring Heel Jack's fame grew, the less frequently reports about him were made until 1843, when a new wave of sightings swept the country. That is when attacks on carriage drivers became much more common.
So you think that basically maybe the original Spring Heel Jack was a rapist, the second one is some kind of a thief, or maybe, like I said, maybe it's different types of criminals that are trying to play, because some people were technically afraid of Spring Heel Jack, apparently. Maybe that they were trying to appear as him because they knew that had worked in the past for different things.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're going to commit a crime, why not take, from the folklore of the area that you're committing crimes in, and then dress yourself like that person, and then go on and commit the crime.
They were saying the Peckham ghost and the Park ghost might not even have been Spring Heel Jack, but because he was just a weirdo, the person appeared as bizarre, they assumed it was Spring Heel Jack.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can, if somebody wants to, like, to commit a crime, commit a devious act, they can borrow from the folklore of area. I mean, there was a case of this cult in Mexico that I had listened to in a podcast where a lady said she was the reincarnation of an Aztec goddess, I believe. And she tricked a bunch of people in a village to give her everything. And she did, she picked the men that she wanted, the women she wanted.
That was David. That's why he's back now. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I forgot her name. It's a very interesting case. That would make a great show in and of itself. But this lady just traveled around with this man, and they would go village to village saying they were gods and goddesses. And finally, a village bought the act, and they basically consecrated her as the queen of their region, and they gave up everything to her and worshipped her as a goddess. So, she knew she wasn't a goddess, but she played off of the cultural norms and mores of the area that she was in. She knew how to get in and play off of people's fears and hopes and that kind of thing. So in England here in the 19th century, you would have aspiring criminals, be it rapists, stagecoach robbers, or just people looking to draw attention, would draw on the Spring Heel Jack lore in order to garner themselves some attention in the papers and whatnot.
I have a good question for Tim and David. I kind of mentioned this in our private chat we have on here. So Spring Heel Jack was supposedly preying on these women by knocking on the door, and when they answer, he tears their clothes off and stuff. What would he have done if he was thinking some woman's going to answer? Some big buff dude that's like in his 20s answers the door. Is it some guy that's capable of whooping his ass? Would he have tore his clothes off?
Yes, it was a possibility, or he must have scouted it out to know women were there.
Or like someone comes banging on my door. I'm in my underwear sipping on a beer or something. I'll fatten out of shape. And would he tear my clothes off and stuff too? Or like, would he say wrong door? Or like, what would he do?
Nah, definitely would have like scoped out the place beforehand, I think.
Or he knocks on
That's
your
what I
door.
think too.
He tries spitting flames in your face, but you know how to do it too. You spit it back at him. Or he tries to do these like jumps and stuff, but you know how to do it too, and you chase after him.
Yeah.
Or he jumps into someone's yard and they have a gun or something the next yard over.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
That's really, think about it, that's really kind of dangerous from his point of view too. Even though he kind of deserves to get his ass whooped for being a creep. Here, Nick, check this next part. Read this next one.
For decades, especially in London, his name was equated with the boogeyman as a means of scaring children into behaving by telling them if they were not good, Spring Heel Jack would leap up and peering at them through their bedroom windows by night.
So apparently, I'm guessing Spring Heel Jack must have scared the crap out of people if they're threatening their kids at bedtime, and be good or Spring Heel Jack's going to get you. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that is kind of a crazy story to make kids into, make them behave well. Just like when you tell kids that they're going to get coal for Christmas from Santa if they misbehave. I mean, I remember as a child, my father told me about a story about a person named Fingernail Freddy. And that, again, this could be its own show, where this old hermit in Rhode Island.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
had he had a bunch of kids that were like messing with his farm, and one day he shot some like bird shot at them out of a shotgun to scare them away, and they came back and they set his house on fire, and he went to go rescue his daughter and his wife, but they perished in the fire, and he was disfigured and burned. So he allegedly haunts this cemetery that wasn't too far from my grandmother's house growing up. And
David's asking you, was it Kakui or La Llorona? I don't know how to say that.
Llorona.
Do you know about it? I don't know. But
a little bit. And it sounds very similar to those stories, but my father and Fingernail Freddy was the basis for Freddy Krueger. That story came way before the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were made, because my grandparents told my father, watch out for Fingernail Freddy, or he's going to get you. So using stories that are rooted in cultural folklore to scare children is nothing new, and it's going to go on. So Spring Heel Jack would definitely be an effective figure in doing that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We have about 25 minutes left in the show, so we have a few things to talk about still. So the next part I wanted to mention, we've been kind of talking about this off and on. Who was Spring Heel Jack, or what are some of the common theories about who was he, if it's a he? So the Times reported the alleged attack on Jane Alsop on March 1838 under the heading Late Outrage at Old Ford. This was followed by an account of the trial of one person named Thomas Milbank, who immediately after the reported attack had boasted in the Morgan's Arms that he was Spring Heel Jack. He was arrested and tried at Lambeth Street Court. There you go. Look, opened his mouth. Yeah. Now he's got arrested, whether it was him or not. The arresting officer was a guy named James Leah, and who had earlier arrested William Corder, the Red Barn murderer. I don't know what that is. That sounds kind of vicious, though. So Milbank had been wearing white overalls and a great coat, and he dropped outside the house, and the candle he dropped was also found. He escaped conviction only because Jane Alsop insisted her attacker breathed fire, and Milbank admitted that he could do no such thing. Most of the other accounts were written long after the date. Contemporary newspapers did not mention him. So we got one guy who runs his mouth trying to make himself sound sound, I don't know, Mr. Popular at the time, blows up in his face.
Yeah.
I guess he tried to spy on someone, they were saying, tried to spy on this person, drops the candle, gets captured. My question is, how did they know he was going to be there unless someone grabbed him or something?
I don't know. But, I mean, we've seen throughout history here in America where
Hi, London.
hello, London.
Hi, London.
She wants to know about Spring Hill Jack.
He does. And so we've seen people who are
It's
too cute. Yeah, we see people who are in prison, you know, usually lifers, that will try to take credit for crimes they did not commit just in order to gain some notoriety. So I think that was the case with this last guy.
What do you think, David? You think he kind of made an ass out of himself trying to be Spring Hill Jack and got caught?
Definitely. It's like we were saying earlier, somebody probably just dressed up as him to try to use it.
This was in... Let's see, what year was that again? Let me see. That was in 1838. So Spring Hill Jack was reported, 70 years later?
Yeah.
So I guess that wasn't the only technical Spring Hill Jack. John says, "Hey, London," and
wow, now she's becoming the main attraction.
And
Wave London
says she's adorable.
Thank you.
She's taking over. It's all right though.
Yeah. So in July 1847, a Spring Hill Jack investigation, and I'm gonna butcher this, Chainmouth Devon led to a Captain Finch being convicted on 2 charges of assault against women, during which he is said to have been disguised in a skin coat and had the appearance of bullock's hide, a skull cap, horns, and a mask. So there's another guy getting arrested, saying he's Spring Hill Jack. You want to read the next one?
There was a rumor that the Marquis of Waterford was Spring Hill Jack because he had bad experiences with women and police officers. He was known to do anything for a bet and had acquired the nickname the Mad Marquis.
Mad Marquis or Mad Marquis. So we're getting all these people that are getting arrested. That's 3 or 4 now. We just continuing on. One more, Nick, and then we'll go on to something else.
The Lord Mayor accused a group of young aristocrats of being responsible for Spring Hill Jack after they made an irresponsible wager with a companion to dress as a bear, a ghost, and the devil himself.
Is that my thing, though? Is that real, or is that just someone made that up later on, or what?
Well, I mean, if you go and look at history, some of these aristocrats that were in France and England, Germany, Western Europe at large, they were into some weird things. Have any of you ever heard of a guy named Marquis de Sade?
The name's familiar.
So Marquis de Sade was his name is where the word sadist comes from. He wrote some very explicit literature to keep it somewhat family friendly.
Yeah.
And the things he described doing with all kinds of people, it wasn't quite Spring Hill Jack, but he showed the inner workings of the aristocracy here in Europe at the time, and they were some weird people. So maybe this was a circle of aristocrats who dressed up and just messed with the peasantry for fun.
What do you think, Tim?
It's very possible. I'm still leaning more towards like a club or like different, like you said, copycats over the years.
What do you think, David? Do you agree with what Nick was saying? It could possibly be the aristocrats?
Maybe. That's with the peasantry.
Definitely somebody that wanted to keep like that type of story going, Like,
yeah.
You could even say like secret societies and stuff like that, like something that they would pass on,
That's true. Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
showed London a picture of him in the other screen. She goes, what Spring Hill Jack looked like. She goes, ew.
So, some believe that Spring Hill Jack was a paranormal creature. They consider him an extraterrestrial entity with a non-human appearance. So now we're getting into aliens. Now we're getting kind of the bizarre ones here. They believe he he has his superhuman jumping abilities from living on a high gravity world. I had to throw that in there. I saw that on the internet, and there's no way I couldn't bring that theory up. So, okay, so we're all kind of on the fence here. We all agree that we don't think it's an alien from a high gravity world, right?
What about if it was a person and then the person became a ghost and continue that?
Yeah.
But Tier says frat boys. So let's see. Others believe Spring Heel Jack was a demon summoned into this world from practitioners of the occult. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier. They believe he was brought here to cause trouble. So do you think after everything that we had talked about, David, does that go kind of along the lines of what you were saying? Maybe it was something that was summoned, or do you think maybe that's too much going on for it to be a spirit of some kind?
It's a possibility. I mean, especially around that time period too.
Oh yeah.
There's definitely a lot of stories that like can be used like hand in hand, like you were saying earlier, Nick. You know.
Oh yeah. So one more thing I was going to mention: no one was ever caught and identified as Spring Heel Jack. I forgot to mention that earlier in the show. So the mystery to this day still remains. No one knows who Spring Heel Jack was. Was Spring Heel Jack even a person? Was he a demon? Was it a person? Was it an alien from another world with high gravity?
Yeah.
Well, what do you call it? Tim was saying that David says he's going to chase Spring Heel Jack in Chicago next week. So,
What's this? I think he was in Texas, wasn't he?
yeah. So we're going to go over some of these, Nick. We went over some of these already.
Yeah.
So let's have you bring some of these up. This is what some of the skeptics say Spring Heel Jack was or was not.
Skeptical investigators have dismissed the stories of Spring Heel Jack as mass hysteria. And that's definitely a possibility. I mean, something that happened actually rather recently in the past 3 to 5 years. I think it was upstate New York, where there were these teenage girls going on TikTok and they were acting like they had Tourette's. So they all started posting videos where they had tics. And then that spilled over into real life, where they started having these tics for no reason. And then their parents all brought, and it was in one town, and I think in the same school. So this kind of hysteria spread throughout this town and the school where people just started randomly developing these tics for no reason. These people didn't have any condition that would lead them to having these tics. So a mass hysteria could spread very fast, very swiftly. So Spring Heel Jack could have been based on a kernel of truth, and then the hysteria around it just grew and grew as time passed on.
So you do think it could be basically mass hysteria?
I think that's definitely an element of it.
So some people say they think it was a hoax or a hallucination. So what do you think of that? Like a hoax, like it never ever happened.
That's kind of a stretch. I mean, to prove something was a hoax, you're going to need to find the people that planned the hoax. You need to find their plans, and you'd have to build quite a case. So I definitely think something happened. I guess it be it natural or supernatural, I don't know. But to say it was a hoax off the get-go is just kind of a lazy way. And this is what a lot of skeptics do. They just dismiss things as hoaxes because they really don't want to look into a particular phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's a lazy man or a
But
lazy person excuse.
It couldn't be a total hoax or a hallucination because they did find some evidence, like these women's clothes were all ripped up and stuff. And the carriage man obviously didn't crash into a wall on purpose to hurt himself. You know? The last one. Could these be exaggerated? Like I know you were saying you think that they could be.
I think that's definitely part of it. I think there was a group of people who had extraordinary abilities and like acrobatics and whatnot.
There is one more. So we covered him being a ghost, an alien, a person, a demon. What do you think of this one, Nick? Could he be a time traveler? Some people say. I know it's one of the crazy outlandish. My favorite's the alien with the high gravity world.
Yeah.
That one's my favorite one, but this one's probably my second.
Time traveler. I mean,
So I'm going to put David on the spot. David, do you think it could be a time traveler? I see London.
That'd be cool. When do we see him next?
What do you call it? Were you asking about Spring Hill Jack newspapers in the chat, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll find some. What do you call it? So this one, I thought, this is the last part of the show. I know we have about 15 minutes left. Let me make this a little bit bigger. I don't think Tim and Nick have ever even heard of this. In Prague, there's a similar figure known as the Perak or Purak. The Spring Man of Prague is reported to have been in Czechoslovakia basically around World War II, 1939 to 1945. As writers such as Mike Dash have shown, the elusiveness and supernatural leaping abilities attributed to the Purak bear a close resemblance to those exhibited by Spring-Heel Jack, and distinct parallels can be drawn between the two entities. The Springer was said to have leapt out of shadowy alleys to startle passers-by. What do you think of that before I read more on this? So basically, this is in Prague now, Czechoslovakia during World War II. Oh, wow. There's something similar to Spring-Heel Jack going on. I didn't say nothing about him being a rapist, I guess, but he's
That's weird. Under Nazi occupation, there was some guy pulling all this still too.
Yeah, that guy has balls.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that, Nick, before we read on? Have you heard about that, or do you think that could be a possibility?
I've never heard of that Prague leaper until I was today years old when I heard about it.
Today years old.
However, that could go, again, you could say it's a copycat, someone that heard of Spring-Heel Jack, or maybe there was some kind of a supernatural entity that does these things. I'd have to look at the matter more. However, an interesting note that we just mentioned is they were under Nazi occupation, so perhaps this was some sort of a tactic employed by those who were under the occupation. They would jump out of alleyways and pretend to be a ghost of some sorts to scare the Nazis.
Yeah. Or it could have been a completely different group wanting to mimic what happened before too.
Yeah.
So if we could eliminate some of these other outlandish theories, what if it was a demon? You got to tell me there's summoning demons, this many of them, and they're all appearing to do the same thing?
Yeah.
Are there this many time travelers just appearing for the last 150 years or 200 years? Are there this many aliens from other worlds with high gravity appearing? But that one's still my favorite one.
High gravity. High gravity like malt liquor.
Yeah. So, continuing on, oral tradition suggests that some of the Perak's leaps were part of an extraordinary magnitude, including the act of jumping over train carriages, similar to what Spring-Heel Jack was reported to have done. Researcher Mike Dash also quotes George Zanotti, a reported authority on policing of Prague during the war years. And here's a quote from that guy. He says, in 1940 to 1942, none of our police precincts in Prague informed us in their daily reports of the existence of the Spring Man. This does not mean that such rumors might not have circulated. However, it would have had to have been impossible to include them in reports without tangible proof. So he's saying that basically the Spring Man could have existed, but there's no proof of them. Therefore, the newspaper wouldn't have carried these stories, is what he's saying. Continuing on, you want us to read the next one, Nick?
So in 2015, a social activist claiming the identity of Perak fronted a guerrilla media campaign to commemorate the former site of the Lety concentration camp.
So, I mean, lady, like in the Philippines?
No, this was in Prague.
This is in Prague?
Yeah.
I was going to say, this couldn't be in the Philippines. I was like, what, now Spring-Heel Jack's in the Philippines too?
So, I mean, I just, said it just moments ago that this Spring-Heel Jack in Prague was some kind of an anti-Nazi fighter. and employed psychological warfare instead of traditional warfare. That's psychological warfare has been used throughout history. It is now, and it was definitely in World War II. So this could be an example of that.
Oh yeah, for sure. What do you think, David? Why would they be doing it during the war? Are they trying to just like entertain themselves? Are they trying to scare the Nazis or draw the attention away from something?
Definitely, probably a scare tactic.
Do you
For
think it was
sure.
one of the Nazis, you mean, or?
It could have been. I mean, somebody that knew some type of story about it, just to throw people off.
Yeah. Go ahead, say something for a second, Nick. I'm typing a message out for our chat room.
I mean, yeah, you could even flip it and say maybe the Prague Spring-Heeled Jack, the Prague Springer, whatever they call him.
Springman.
Springman. The Springman was a Nazi performer who, got dressed up and would jump out of alleyways at people in order to keep them under fear, under the thumb of the Nazis. If you're walking out in the streets at night and a scary man's jumping out of the alleyway, you're going to look for protection from wherever you could get, and that could include the people that occupied them, the Nazis.
Or they could have summoned something too, like we were saying.
Yeah.
Or an alien from another world with high gravity appeared there too. So, we have one more talking point. The Purrock, like the Spring-Heeled Jack, went on to become a folklore hero, even starring in several animated superhero cartoons during the time, fighting the SS, the earliest of which is Jiri Trinka's 1946 film Purrock, a SS or Springman and the SS. So apparently the Springman's some kind of badass that was fighting the Nazis in the old cartoons.
Well, basically kind of like their Captain America, fighting against the bad guys who they beat for the Nazis. So
yeah,
it makes sense that these people would elevate the Springman to such heights as a means of boosting themselves, and also, again, a scare tactic using psychological warfare against the Nazis in order to try to break their morale.
Oh yeah. So a couple things. We're going to end the show here in a few minutes, but before we end the show, so you guys, are you all leaning towards Spring-Heeled Jack's a person, or just to make things interesting, if you don't think Spring-Heeled Jack is a person, what would be your option number 2?
Well, I've stated throughout the show that I think it was a person. If I don't think it's a person that's very skilled in or an organization of people, rather, it wouldn't just be one person with such a long line of sightings. But I think it would be some kind of a demon or a poltergeist, again, that might not necessarily mean harm, but they thrive off of chaos and just causing trouble.
So what do you think, David? I'm interested to hear this.
I definitely think it started out as a person.
So if it wasn't a person, though, what do you think it would be, though, if it wasn't a person? Just to make things interesting, because
Poltergeist or demon. Definitely.
I agree too. Yep, I agree. Most likely human, but second thing would be maybe a demon.
So if they're saying that Spring-Heeled Jack had a devilish-looking face, my thing too is like, so would it have been someone wearing a disguise to try and commit some kind of crime so people can't recognize him, you think?
Yeah, if it was, and it sounds like the original sightings were of a criminal nature, that would be a perfect disguise to either commit robbery or a sexual assault in. And if you can attach a thing from folklore like Spring-Heeled Jack to you while committing this crime, your identity is even further obscured.
Yeah.
It's like multiple layers of a costume and protection.
Couple things real quick. So One thing I'd like to mention is Spring Heel Jack, historically on our old show that we used to do, was a topic that we would bring up, every few months?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure we'll revisit Spring Heel Jack. There is another subject we bring up to go with this. I don't want to give too much away, but we do have another subject that takes place in America, in Illinois, that we're going to bring up here within the next few weeks. And I got to wait for David to make this one. This is going to be a weird one. Yeah, so we're trying to get David to be a normal cast member with us here whenever he's able to make it. Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about what's going to happen with our supposed release party of our documentary in about 2 weeks? We kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just for those who are going to watch this and didn't watch the beginning.
So we just finished up our Nevada Sand Yeti documentary, The Desert Bigfoot. And we want to do a watch party where we'll just blow up our documentary on the screen where we're talking now. And we'll be in the chat. We'll be talking to people, but we don't really want to interrupt the viewing experience. However, after that, then we're going to kind of do like a play-by-play where we will replay the documentary, but we'll be on the screen and we're going to break things down and tell the audience what we were seeing, what we were feeling, what we were thinking during those moments. So I'm really looking forward to both these episodes of our show and then getting out this documentary, which
Me too.
has been years in the making.
Yeah, it was mostly filmed during COVID of all time. So we got different things going on. Me and Tim both had kids and stuff. So we are kind of a little bit behind on the whole editing deal with that. But we finally got it done. We have a couple of little videos and things coming out that we have in store for everybody. I'm probably going to scare the daylights out of David. He's not going to want to come back after he sees what we got. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we're trying to get David to be a normal member that hangs around us and stuff all the time. But we got to put him to the test of taking him on a Bigfoot trip, ghost trips, the show. We got to send him through the ringer first.
So Bigfoots Pad has become like the Hells Angels. He's a hanging around. He's going to earn his patch. Okay.
Earn my badge.
And I better see on the news. He's going out of state next weekend, so we won't see him. But I swear to God, there better be something about a Spring Heel Jack character in Chicago where he's going.
There's definitely going to be watch.
But no, going back on subject, we're going to do some kind of a release party. That will be in 2 weeks. Next week, we're hoping for Saturday is what it's looking like at 7 p.m. Pacific. We're going to do a show on the Mogollon Monster of Arizona. It's AKA also known as the Arizona Bigfoot. Floyd Wills, we had him on our show last week. He wrote a book about giants in Nevada. We're going to have him on the panel in David's spot for next week. So that should be pretty exciting. And then I'm guessing we're going to have David back on the show the week after that, hopefully.
Yeah,
definitely.
But again, Bigfoots Pad is a viewer-driven show. I say this at the end of every show. We are driven by our audience, for our audience. Thanks, Matir. Thanks for joining us again. We're a viewer-driven show. We will never ask for money. We try to keep the show free. We've been around at this point for a few months. We're still growing our audience. So we want everyone to click like on that video, click subscribe, share our videos, do whatever you can to get the word out. Bigfoots Pad, like I said, will always be a free show. We'll never ask you for money. We're not like those people that beg for super chat. Anyways, click like. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you all next weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.